What's up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of Charm City Heavyweights Podcast, brought to you by the folks at Grade 8 Sports Memorabilia in Parkville, Maryland. I'm the host, Matt Trigger. With me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, Josh Merrill. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, Matt? Coming live from the man cave.
And because it is 9:13, Josh decided to show up to the 9 o'clock start time at 9:09. So sorry for the delay, folks. We have a special guest tonight.
I'm a diva.
Yes, you are. I don't know why you think that, but you are. Is the association, Mr. Ryan.
Can you guys hear me?
There he is.
There we go.
See him, man? I think Matt's having issues, man.
I can see he's on screen there, but I can't see him on my computer.
Can you hear me, Ryan?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's the audio's going in and out a little bit too. The internet's not great.
Oh wow!
Right before we went live too, we were fine, and then
of course that's how it happens. Lord. Whoa.
Can everybody hear me?
I hear you.
All right. I don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi right this second, but I'm hoping that this sorts itself out soon, because this is going to irritate the shit out of me. Josh, we good?
I can hear you good, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you
Ryan,
good now,
good?
Matt. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. I don't know what was said while I was in a little state of choppiness. Ryan, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Appreciate the invite on the show tonight. I'm doing the best I can to not be the Jorge Mateo of the lineup, or the Devin Duvernay or James Purcey of the Ravens wide receiver core. I'm trying to actually produce to this show and produce something for this content. So happy to be here.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining the show, man. It's been a pleasure to get to talk to you, get to know you recently. You've been working with a lot of local social media and radio entities throughout the course of your adulthood, man. I know you were with WBAL radio for a little while,
Yep.
And now you're with Ed Block. How's everything going with helping out with Ed Block?
Oh, it's been great. Coming back up here to Baltimore, moving back here from Charlotte. I was down there for 5 years, from 2017 to 2021 and 2022. Coming back here to Baltimore and being back in the community, and now officially working for a company that I've had a lot of respect for over the years, when I was working for Nestor, and then when I was working for XM and with Glenn Clark and all those guys, to actually have the official title, content manager, producer, whatever you want to call it, with the station. I'm wearing my hoodie right now, representing with swag. It's great to work for this company and book players and help these guys get in here to Baltimore, because they're doing a lot of great things on and off the field.
That's fantastic. And I know that you guys hold a big event, the Ed Block Courage Awards, every year. Let the listeners know what it is that you guys organize and do for the NFL and for the community.
Yeah, so every year, the Ed Block Courage Award, there are 32 winners of the award. Each team votes on one winner for their team. It is the only award, I believe, of all the fancy awards out there, that is actually voted on by the players. It's not it's not an AP award. It's not an NFL, Writers Association award. It's not a popularity contest. Like the guys, all 32 winners that we had last year, Marcus Peters won it for the Ravens. Guys like Jameis Winston won it for the Saints. All those guys get voted on by their teammates, and they're mostly recognized for the adversity that they've gone through on the field and for the charitable events and the things they do to get back to the community off the field. So that's what makes that award really special. Every April, we usually have an event in Baltimore. This year we had it down in the Inner Harbor. And, we brought about 26 of the 32 guys came in. Jameis Winston came in. Jacoby Myers came in. Former Raven Max Williams came in. It was great to have him back here in Baltimore because he was wearing purple and black all those years ago. It's bringing these guys in for one night to kind of congratulate them and cherish they're congratulating them on the award. And then the next day is the real special day where they get to go to St. Vincent's Villa, the Catholic Charities, and meet kids who are victims of child abuse and kind of make their day an even better better opportunity or a better experience. So that's what makes the foundation really neat, and I'm happy to be working for them.
That's excellent, man. That's excellent. Josh, I know that you wanted to ask Ryan a few questions, man. Go ahead and fire away.
Man, I only got a couple questions. What got you into radio? I was reading about you earlier. You have worked you've been doing it for a while, it seems like, but you right out of college, is that something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, once you realize in middle school and high school that you're not going to be playing in the major leagues, you're not going to be a professional baseball player, not going to be playing in the NFL anymore. When you grow up and you love sports and you love being around it and just the experience of I grew up an Oriole fan. Grew up a Raven fan, kind of got right into the love of sports right around the time that the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2000. I just wanted to keep being around the game, and even if it wasn't something that was going to be profitable, if it wasn't something that was going to make me a lot of money, I've said this multiple times in my radio career. I haven't worked one day in my life, and I've enjoyed doing this as long as I have. And I'll say that the minute that I don't enjoy it anymore, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I have yet to even sniff that sentence or that conversation. So
that's awesome. What got you to? How'd you end up with the Ed Block Courage Awards?
So Brett Dickinson is our executive director, and I've always said this with radio: it's not necessarily about what your skills are. It's about who you know, and it's a very small and tight industry. You're meeting the same people that were interns of yours, or someone was your boss somewhere, and now suddenly you're their boss. All that stuff, and Brett was actually a intern of mine at WNST for my first radio gig, and over the years when Brett started working for Ed Block. He was a guy that I was trying to help in terms of getting players on, and if he needed a number, if he needed contact, whatever. And ultimately, it's just he's been flirting with me for years about trying to get me to actually work for the company. And coming back up here to Baltimore last year, I think the stars kind of aligned, and I said, hey, I'm gonna have some time on my hands. There's the Ravens thing with BAL, there's the Orioles thing with BAL. I think I can still be able to do this and help out. Help out in the community and help a good company like Ed Block.
That's awesome. All right, last question, man. Tell us one thing in radio that most people don't know that happens. I ask all the radio people this.
That's a great question. That is a great question.
And it doesn't have to mean anything get you in trouble or anything like that. Just something that would surprise us, maybe.
Honestly, it's I remember this quote from John Harbaugh, one of his Monday press conferences earlier this year. The end of the bar talk line that he had during that Monday press conference that kind of ticks some people off. And I mean, especially it's pretty funny. And us on the radio when I was working at BAL and 98 Rock at the time, like us having to actually play that conversation, on the air was kind of funny, but. Every time that I've produced a radio show, or I've been on a radio show, or I've been a guest, or I've been a host, or I've been a producer, or whatever, I just don't look at it as just not. I don't take it seriously. Like it's fun. Like sports are meant to be fun. There are certain times where you do have to kind of be buttoned up a little bit and be serious. But in the end, I mean, sports are fun. Like I said before about doing this thing for as long as I have. I don't take this thing seriously at all. I do care about my product. I care about the content I'm putting out. I care immensely about the guests I'm booking on the show, who goes on my show, all that stuff. But in essence, we're all having fun. We're all joking around. It's not meant to be too serious. So
it's awesome. It's just talking sports and laughing with your buddies.
Correct. Correct.
Everybody's listening.
Correct.
I wanted to ask you, Ryan, what's been the biggest separation in terms of day-to-day work life when it comes to working for Ed Block as opposed to BAL or NST? What's the biggest change for you?
I will say this is the first time in years that I haven't had like 3 jobs at once. Ed Block has been there for me. It was actually right there for me kind of when my time at BAL and 98 Rock came to an end. I'm not stuck to my phone as much as I used to. Even when I was traveling with the Ravens, or I was having to do every Oriole game, doing the producing the pregame shows and the postgame shows with Molesky and all that stuff. I've been doing this long enough now that I know, I'm always 2 steps ahead of myself. I know what games are coming up. I know what broadcasters I have to reach out to. I am always trying to think forward ahead of myself. Like if I continue to do this, I don't want to be complacent and book the same guests all the time. When I was working when I was doing a daily show, I always kind of said to myself, hey, if I book a guest, I'm not going to reach out to them again for another 2 weeks. It was a way for me to just kind of challenge myself to continue to open up my role, or to expand my Rolodex. But the biggest thing I will say in working with Ed Block now is that, they do have the one event in April. And then when that's done, it's basically kind of turning the page to the next year and preparing for that event for next year. I'm already reaching out to players for next year. But I will say this, in terms of working for Ed Block versus working in daily radio, having to react to games every night, all that kind of stuff, I don't have to devote as much of my life to it as I did when I was working in radio. So.
Well, that's awesome. That's something
fair.
Me and Matt go back and forth with. Go ahead.
It is.
I didn't look at my phone because me and him usually text. Let me see if he texted me. Nope, you didn't. It's both our fault. Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
You're fine, man. You're fine. I wanted to ask you, I know that you did a lot of work with WBAL Radio. They're the flagship station for the Ravens. You've had a chance to work with a lot of former players that did the commentary, either preseason or regular season. Not to put you on the spot in a negative way, was there ever a player that used to play for the Ravens where they were in the booth and it just didn't seem natural for them to talk football, even though you remember watching them fondly as a player?
I will say this, for the 1 year last year that I was in the booth with the Ravens, I learned so much from Rod Woodson. And the cool thing about Rod was that this past year, and obviously this unfortunately just ended the opportunity ended for him. He was coaching with the XFL. So the only time that people got to see Rod in the booth was the preseason games they did last year, where it was Jerry and Rod in the booth, and they were simulcasting the games on TV. But for all the other radio games that I did last year, it's me, it's Will Blake, who's the producer for Kirk and Marianne on 98 Rock. He's my director. So usually in all these booths, in all the stadiums we went to, whether it's Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, all these places, the two of us are sitting behind Jerry and Rod. And I've got this big board in front of me. Will's got his director's case, telling Jerry where to go, what to pay attention to, all this stuff. And I'll say this, Rod, those, I guess, what was it, 17, 18 games, whatever it was, he probably threw 500 pens across the room because this guy is coaching the entire game while he's trying to comment on the games as well. And we're trying to hold him down. We're trying to we're dipping and ducking from pens that Rod is throwing. He's a Hall of Fame defensive back. He's a Super Bowl champion, and he's criticizing guys on the Ravens. He's criticizing guys on he's coaching guys on the opposing teams. And I enjoyed it each and every week that I was behind Rod, just because I got to see him from a Hall of Fame perspective break down the game, and then from a coaching standpoint, him literally watching in real time what guys were doing plays right and which guys were doing plays wrong. So I'm definitely going to miss that being behind Rod this fall.
Hey Ryan, do you ever gotta like pinch yourself, like sit like you just said, like wow, that's Rod Woodson. Like I grew up watching him, like that's gotta be because I've gotten starstruck on our show, when we get like a former player or somebody I've been watching forever, it's like it's amazing. It's weird. Like I never thought I'd get a chance to talk to you, so it's wild. So how'd that make you feel, man? Do you get that?
The longer I do this, the less I do get starstruck. Like being in a locker room, and you're around the players. They get frustrated. They get frustrated with questions sometimes, and then you're seeing them as human beings too. So that kind of takes the allure off of it sometimes. But literally sharing the booth with Rod this year, and especially at times where if we're in commercial breaks or we're in our pre-production meetings or whatever it was, like Rod's actually talking to me about what happened and what I thought about the play. And I'm like, Rod, I don't know football. Like you're a Hall of Famer. Like my opinion does not matter here about that play or like if that guy did well or whatever, or criticizing or whatever. Like there was times where Jerry's been doing play-by-play for the Ravens for years. Rod's a Hall of Famer. Like it was my first year on the job, and Will had been in the booth with doing the play-by-play stuff for years. Like there were times where Rod was asking me questions about the game going on. Like I do not, I'm not even going to pretend like I know football. Like I'm not I'm not having this conversation with you, Rod. And that was definitely a time where the hair kind of stands up on your arms a little bit. Just when you have a Hall of Famer breaking down the game with you.
Oh, I'd be intimidated as shit.
Yeah.
It's Rod Woodson. Like, what can you say? Like,
right.
Everything you say is stupid. So,
right.
I understand. I do the same thing.
It's kind of funny that Josh mentioned being starstruck, Ryan. I'll tell you that Bernard Pollard is a good friend of ours. He's
love Bernard.
He's been on the show a few times now, and I've had the chance to interview him solo, and he's been on the show with Josh and I. And the first time Josh saw him on screen, I saw the look on his face, and then I literally turned the entire interview over to him. I said, "Hey, Bernard, Josh has a ton of questions he wants to ask you," and I stopped talking. And he's rapid fire texting me, cussing me out till the sun goes down, and it was hilarious. He did well though, but. It's crazy because years ago, Bernard blocked Josh on Twitter when they got into an argument, and then he's talking to him years later on the show.
Yeah, no idea. He has no idea it's me.
It's always funny with those stories too. And I've got a couple of those too with guys that have blocked you, and then literally you're talking to them a couple years later when they're not playing anymore, and you're like, "Do you remember that incident?"
Yeah, they probably block a lot of people every day, and Bernard's very outspoken.
He is.
And Josh probably didn't realize 5-6 years ago that he was going to be doing this, but he actually said something to Bernard about it, and Bernard just started cracking up laughing. So he took it all in stride.
That's one thing I do like about Bernard is that he knows when to laugh at himself, and he knows that sometimes he's going to say some stuff that triggers some people and get some people mad at him and all that. But I will say this: I am glad that they did invite him back for the whole Super Bowl thing. You didn't know if it was going to be like a Chris McAllister thing where they were going to mention him and he wasn't going to be there. Like you had to invite him back for the 10-year anniversary stuff just because he was a part of that team and he was a part of the team winning the championship. So,
hey Ryan, you got any inside info on that? Why is C-Mac kept out of the shack, man?
I don't know, man. And for how prestigious of a career Chris McAllister had as a Raven, and the fact that he had that, he should be in the Ring of Honor. And I think as time goes on, hopefully it's a thing where when Harbaugh's not around anymore, whether it's him stepping out of the retiring or just not coaching the team anymore. Eventually, the team does kind of circle back to getting to Chris McAllister. You're seeing him at more of the alumni events. You're seeing him at the fan events at the stadium. You're seeing him at tailgates. You're seeing him at Jimmy's Famous Seafood. Eventually, I think as time heals all wounds, so to speak. I think eventually this thing's going to get done. And
Yeah, he should. He should. It's silly.
At what point do you really circle back around? It's been 15 years since
Yeah.
he's
And
been
he's
here.
the best corner in Ravens history.
Correct.
Down. I mean,
Correct.
it's not even an argument.
Yeah. Well, for some of the names that they do have up in the Ring of Honor, like Chris McAllister has to be there. Like, especially given the fact that he was on that Super Bowl 35 team. He was right. That secondary was insane between McAllister, Starks, Herring, and Woodson. Like,
and James Trapp.
Right.
Trapp, yeah.
Right. I mean, all those.
Half the fans don't even know who the hell Ernest Biner is.
Right.
Who the fuck is Ernest Biner? Oh, sorry.
Right. Yeah.
Ernest Biner, and he's up there. I don't know who he is hardly.
Yeah, like Chris, I think eventually this thing's going to get done, and Chris McAllister's going to be in the Hall of Fame or in the Ring of Honor, and if he's not, then you definitely have to look at this thing and be like, it's just a bunch of names up there. Like if Chris McAllister's not in, then what are we doing here?
I mean, you have McCrary up there, I think.
Yeah.
I think McCrary played here like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it was short.
McAllister played here from 98 or 99 until 2007 or 2008.
His entire prime.
Yeah.
He played his entire career here with the exception of 1 year in New Orleans.
Yeah, top 10 pick, and yeah.
How do you not have him up there? He was the prototype.
He was an awesome corner, man. He was so
the prototype
physical.
for a cornerback in the 2000s.
Oh yeah. That's what I thought Jimmy Smith reminded me of was a C-Mac, man.
But he wasn't as physical as McAllister. McAllister could tackle at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
He was afraid. He wasn't afraid to go in there and take on blocks. McAllister did all that. He wasn't a small dude. I think he was like 6 feet, 6'1". He was a big dude for his time at cornerback. And
we had McAllister and Samari Rowe for a long time, man. Because
I think we traded for Roll a year after Starks left.
I believe so. Yeah,
it was like a year or two after Starks left. Samari Roll came in. Yeah,
from the Titans.
But that's a touchy subject for Josh because Ryan, because Chris McAllister is one of Josh's favorite Ravens.
Same.
He belongs in, man.
Same.
He definitely belongs in there.
It's sad.
So, kind of getting into a little bit of Ravens talk, Ryan. I know that you have covered the team for multiple radio stations over the years, and you've been at the state for the games and all that. What's your feeling going into? We're about a month out from camp, give or take. Where knock on wood, we've relatively been unscathed in the injury front. Heading through all the OTAs and mini camps, the guys aren't due back together officially until the start of training camp. What's your feeling going into the later part of the offseason?
I will say this. I mean, the biggest sort of cloud over this team was Lamar's contract. And now that you got that out of the way, everyone can just kind of focus on, getting the business. And, it's all about bringing in and installing Todd Monken's offense. And, from what you saw from OTAs and mini camps or whatever, that the energy is there from Todd Monken. I think that, a lot of the issues that you did have with Greg Roman and his offense, I think you are taking a step forward with that. It's just, but I think there is going to be a little bit of there's going to have to be a grace period or like a preseason or whatever, because it is going to be tough to just scrap that whole offense, that Greg Roman offense, and start over again. But you on paper, at least you do like what this team is doing in terms of bringing in guys like Odell Beckham and hopefully J.K. Dobbins stays healthy. And they involve him in the running game while still trying to improve what they're doing in the passing game. I do like that they're just taking some risks with receivers, like whether the Beckham deal, the Aguilar deal, Laquan Treadwell, like they're bringing in just first round picks from the last 10 years just to try and see if they can get spark fire here and there. But if this team stays healthy, I think this team could go on a run this year.
Ryan, Lamar was asked over and over and over, are they going to work out? Do you put a lot of stock into that, like the guys getting together before camp, meeting up somewhere, or do you think it's overblown, not a big deal?
I think it is a little overblown, just a little bit. All the years that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were all grouping up together in the offseason to throw a ball around on a high school field. I think it is something that just kind of gets, escalated or overblown during the slow months of the NFL calendar. If all these guys are showing up for OTAs and mini camps, and then everyone's on their game when training camp comes around, when guys are actually hitting each other, when these guys start installing the offense, the first couple of weeks of the season. If these guys are putting the work in, off the field, even if they're not all together, I think that's just something that's to quote John Harbaugh from our earlier conversation. That's end of the bar talk.
Oh gosh.
No, you're good. You're good. I was waiting for you. I did want to ask you about a player in particular, Ryan. It's me and Josh have talked about him at length the last couple of shows that we've done. Where are you at with the J.K. Dobbins saga?
Man, that is, and it's interesting. And I was actually I got to hang out with J.K. a little bit a couple of years ago when the Ravens were in Charlotte for a preseason game, and he went to the restaurant that was right next to the restaurant I worked at, and I actually went out and it's on my Instagram. I actually went out and got a picture with him and talked to him for a couple minutes. Seemed like a really cool guy. He comes from kind of humble beginnings, and when he's been on the field, I think he's one of the best backs in the league. But now you're starting to worry about is he ever going to be the same from that devastating knee injury from the preseason game a couple years ago? Harbaugh was talking about a soft tissue injury in the OTAs a couple weeks back. Like, if I am worried a little bit about JK, and I think given the fact that you're seeing some of those tweets from the last month or so, and him talking about loving Baltimore, and his agent is represents a bunch of the running backs in the league, and he's thinking about is this going to be contract related? Is he only going to ball out during this year while he's trying to get a contract? Like, do you pay running backs? I think that's now that Lamar's issue and Roquan's issues are now figured out in terms of their contracts. I think the little black cloud in terms of the contract talk, I think, is going to be shifting over to J.K. Dobbins to see what the Ravens do with him.
I agree with you, but I really don't think that it's his turn in line.
No, he hasn't earned it, man.
It's not about not earning it. It's not about not earning it.
He hasn't earned it. He's been hurt.
We're seeing the league is trending away from paying running backs again.
It's not happening. They're done. It's done.
Henry got paid a couple of years ago, and then you thought it was going to be a resurgence because Dalvin Cook then got paid, and you see he's a free agent now. The Giants have not. They've just restarted talks with Saquon Barkley about a long-term extension. I think there's more pressing needs with the Ravens to get long-term deals done than JK getting an extension.
And when do running backs ever live up to that deal?
Right.
And I think the Ravens,
even with Ray Rice, he got the deal. I know we all know what happened, but he still wasn't himself. He wasn't
all
that. No,
he wasn't.
He appeared to be hitting the wall. He lost a step, and it happened really fast.
His yard per carries went up from 5.3 to 3.7,
and they're almost
the Super Bowl year to the year after.
Yeah, and they're almost a dime a dozen. You can find decent ones on the street. You can draft them late in the draft. You can find they're not hard to get anymore.
If you I saw this graphic the other day on Twitter. It was like the running backs that are free agents right now. Like, you're seeing guys like Zeke Elliott out there available for anybody to sign, and he hasn't been signed yet. Dalvin Cook, supposedly he was a trade candidate for the Vikings, and no one wanted him, and then they flat out released him, and now he's still out there. You mentioned Saquon Barkley. He had some comments at his football camp last week about just not being valued by the Giants. The fact that they paid the quarterback, and they had to decide whether they were going to give the long-term deal to Daniel Jones or the running back. And I was in Charlotte. I was in Carolina and saw they shifted shipped Christian McCaffrey out to San Francisco. Like, the age of the running back is over. And I think now, especially seeing what what the Ravens have done in the offseason with their passing offense, bringing these guys in like Odell Beckham and all that, is this going to be a different shift in identity for the Ravens? Are they going to be a team that's now going to be throwing the ball 40 times a game as opposed to running the ball 40 times?
Yeah, and I agree with you on all that. You make a good point. I just think that if you look at the Ravens roster right now and you look at the guys that are due to be paid, you got to extend Zeitler. You have to extend Zeitler. There's no reason that you don't, unless you are absolutely 100% convinced that Voorhees is going to be the guy at right guard in 24. I think you at least give Zeitler a 1 or 2 year extension to where you can kind of rework that second year, make it a void year to where you can give Voorhees until maybe 25 to really fully get healthy again. I don't know that you prioritize running back over arguably your second best offensive lineman after Ronnie Stanley. And you have both Broderick Jones and Justin Madubuike entering contract years.
Matt, they're not reinvesting in Zeitler again. He's not getting paid big again.
I'm not saying he's going to get paid big. I'm just talking about in terms of priority for who you want to pay. I'm not saying the amount of money needs to be significant. I'm just saying prioritizing your pending free agents. I don't think JK is number one. I think he might be two. I think he might be 2 or 3. I think you got to prioritize keeping one of those defensive tackles.
Yeah.
And you got to prioritize keeping Zeitler. I'm not saying you got to pay Zeitler $11 million a year again, but I think you need to approach him about taking a somewhat reasonable meet in the middle kind of contract extension to keep him a Raven until he retires, because I think he's 33 or 34. So, paying JK all that money.
He may get his feelings hurt if they say, all right, we'll give you, 3 years, $12 million.
But the thing is, that's not at this point.
Because look, the best running back is Dalvin Cook, right? Nobody's paying him because nobody's doing it. It's done. It's
nobody
over.
wants to take on that financial commitment because he's not going to play for the veteran minimum, knowing he's still getting paid from Minnesota. He's going to want his money again. That's why DeAndre Hopkins isn't on a team right now. That's why Ezekiel Elliott isn't on a team right now. These guys are still owed huge chunks of money from their previous employers, and they're not going to play for pennies on the dollar on their next team.
Of course not.
And speaking of Zeke, I could see Zeke being an insurance.
He's the perfect example. He is the perfect example of why you don't.
Right.
I mean, they never live up to it. I'm not saying he sucked last year or the year before, but he wasn't the same. The explosion was gone. And that's what happens. That's why.
And it also doesn't help that Tony Pollard is an all-around better back.
Yeah, that's true.
We saw that. We saw that he's faster. He's more durable. He, did more for the team than Zeke did. But, Zeke had a lot of mileage on him when he got to the NFL. He had Ohio State runs their running backs into the ground.
Right.
Sure do.
I'm cautiously optimistic that they will get something done with JK. I just don't think he's number one on the priority. If that's me, he's not number one on the priority list. And it's nothing personal against him. I think that the Twitter stuff is juvenile and taking the Ravens and your bio, and a lot of people feed into the social media
that with these young kids. With
a lot. But the thing is, a lot of our fans read into social media.
I'm gonna do that to my job, man. I'm gonna delete my collared shirt on. See if I get any attention.
Patrick Queen is in the same boat, Ryan.
Yeah.
Queen. I still believe there's a possibility Queen's not on the opening day roster. Something tells me a team is going to get desperate for middle linebacker help, and they're going to come calling, and we're going to take somebody up on a really good offer. I'm not saying they're going to overpay tremendously and give us a first-round pick or anything, but I think if the Ravens can acquire another cornerback or a wide receiver or somebody that can help the team in a different area, I think they will move on from Queen, because you can essentially slide Kyle Hamilton down to the role he plays, because we run out of a nickel most of the time anyway. Hamilton's the jack of all trades, it seems like. He's big enough to play inside. He's big enough to play outside. He plays the slot corner. he can play deep. He's as advertised. We were hard on him the first month of the season last year, but he's as advertised. So moving Queen still seems like a very reasonable thought heading into the the early days of training camp.
I think if the Ravens do find themselves in preseason, if there's some sort of injury somewhere, whether it's the receiving core or like Mark Andrews or something, or if they have, if they find out that they just don't have any pass rushers, I think I could see that. I could see Queen being packaged for something. I thought if he was going to get dealt, that was going to be before the draft. I thought it was going to be another kind of Marquise Brown situation where they ship the guy out who's still owed the 5th-year option, and you're getting a first-round pick or a late early second-round pick or something for him. I was shocked that he was still on that he was still a Raven by the draft, especially given the fact that they had some holes. They didn't have as many draft picks to work with this year. But yeah, the fact that they did decline the 5th-year option, and now that this is sort of a make or break it year for him, I wouldn't be shocked to see if the Ravens did that, maybe to just kind of motivate PQ a little bit, just because there was the Roquan thing, and he played a lot better after Roquan came in here. I think they value Patrick Queen a lot, but I think they want him. I think they're calling him on his bluff a little bit. I think they want him to say, okay, if you think that you're good enough to be on this team, go show it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the craziest thing to me is that we didn't have a whole lot of draft picks to work with in the first place, and in the 3rd round they still drafted somebody at his position.
Yeah,
who is arguably bigger, stronger, and faster than he is.
Looks a lot more like a linebacker.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when he just tweeted out sheesh, like, brother, this is a business.
Right. And everyone could see that too.
We had to go out and trade our 2nd and 5th round picks to the Chicago Bears to get Roquan Smith. And then he's here for, I think, 4 games, and they give him an extension. That man played here a month and got $100 million from Bisciotti, and you've been here 3 years, and you haven't even sniffed a contract that's going to be worth half of that. And then all of a sudden you're in your feelings. Roquan Smith is the best middle linebacker that we've had since 52 was on the field.
Yep.
There's no doubt about that at all. He proved it. He got paid. And now you want your money. You're not getting $20 million in here.
Yeah,
you're not getting that yearly here. You might get that someplace like maybe the Falcons or the Buccaneers or somebody that can kick out that kind of bread to you. But it's not going to be Baltimore. There's no way. No way.
They can't pay him. It would have to be like a Bowser type deal, like 3 years, $14 million. It has to be something, and he's not going to do that. Not if he has a breakout season. Now, if he has an average season. Never know. But I think they've already moved on from Patrick Queen. They may keep him this year, because him and Roquan were so good together last year, and then give the rookie a chance to learn. But I think they've already moved on. I think once they sign Roquan, that was the end of him anyway. And then once they start drafting your guy high, your position high, that's like, yeah, fuck off.
the kid they drafted is a thumper too. He looks as
we no longer want
advertised.
your service. We no longer want your services, sir. You can move on. Delete or watch your Facebook of our pictures.
Moving on from the Ravens, I know we've spent a good deal of time. I know that it's going to be ramped up again, but there's another important professional sports team here in Baltimore right now. The Orioles they're absolutely rolling right now. And
not today they weren't.
Yeah, not today.
Not today. Yeah, a little hiccup today, but we're still 2 games out of first place in the AL East. It's a 2 or 2.5 game difference. I'm still extremely happy with how things are going.
Me too.
I want more, Ryan. And me and Josh have been going back and forth, and we had we've had Bruce Cunningham on talking to O's baseball. We had Bordy on the show not long ago, and I'm at the thought process now where you just completely wash your hands of this rebuild and you start going all in. and you got to start making sense of who you want to keep, and who you don't. Now, listening to 105.7 The Fan every day can be infuriating depending upon your thought process.
Yes.
Locke and Fora talking about Ohtani has been ad nauseum. He's kind of chilled out recently, but he was like a 2 or 3 week stretch where it was Ohtani.
Yeah, I heard that stretch myself.
Right. So, are you more along the lines of wait and see for the rest of this year, heading into next year, or do you think that we need to really make some tough decisions in the next 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, heading into the trade deadline? Because if we play at the pace that we're playing, we're a 9,500 win baseball team, and we're in the postseason. So where are you at in terms of your Orioles fandom?
So here I am. So in looking at these, I still remember 2012. I still remember 2014. I'm still paying off like debt from buying tickets that year. I still have my gear. I still have my gray sweatshirt downstairs. It was the 2012 playoffs hoodie. I still wear it all the time. Like people are still wondering why I'm like they're like, oh, you're still wearing that shirt or whatever. In looking at how well this team has played this year, I think currently right now on paper, this team is a playoff team, and it's going to be a team that I think that goes on a run in the playoffs. But what I do not want to see is for them to just completely go full Dan Duquette and blow it up to try and win a World Series this year. You have so many guys in the system and I feel like they made the right move early this year, even though it hasn't panned out yet. Sending the Dario Hernandez to Oakland for Cole Irvin. Like I thought that was, kind of a Mike Elias move of, hey, we have some guys in the system. Like he's buried on the depth chart at shortstop. Like we have Gunnar Henderson, we have Joey Ortiz, we have Connor Norby, we have Westberg. Like this guy's not going to be playing for us. Let's try and make a move and get at least a starting pitcher who at the time wasn't walking guys and was a 200 inning guy or 180 inning guy. Like that was a move that was like, okay, I can see this. I want them to obviously make moves this year at the deadline. I want them to find a starting pitcher. I think the issue that you're going to have is that, all these teams now, especially with the expanded playoffs, are going to feel like they're in it. So the Angels are not going to dump, Ohtani. The White Sox have kind of fallen off a little bit, but they had a little stretch where they might have been in it and they weren't going to give up on Giolito and Dylan Cease and all those guys. If I'm Mike Elias, I feel like you have to make some moves to kind of, get this team improved a little bit, but I do not want to see this farm system and all the work that Mike Elias and Sig Mejdal and Yves Rosenbaum and all them, they've been working hard. I don't want to see them blow it up just for them to try and win one World Series this year, which isn't guaranteed.
And that's not our game. Our game is the longevity, the long game. He wants his farm system to never just be a pond we can always dip in for talent, just like Tampa's doing. We're not going to blow this. My fear is, yes, I know we need another pitcher in the rotation. I know we need another bat in the lineup. And I know we need, as much as I love Mateo, I know we need a shortstop that can also, give you a more consistent pop behind the plate. Mateo's way too up and down.
Yeah.
But my thing is, there's not, and I hate to agree with Jason Lockenfor, I really do. But like he says, like there's not a lot of, fat here. Like where, who are we trading? Because I don't really feel comfortable trading anybody.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that with all, for every one of these minor league, ranking systems that come out and you see these guys and, Adley Rutschman's up there at one point and Gunnar Henderson is up there, and Connor Norby and Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall and all these guys, like you do start to like value these guys a little bit more, but then you have to look at it from the perspective of, do other teams value those guys too? Like, I love the fantasy trades that people always make where they're like, we'll send Kyle Bradish to the Yankees and we'll get, Garrett Cole back in return. Like, that's not how it works. Like, you're going to have to give stuff up to get these guys. You can't get Ohtani for, Cesar Prieto, and, you're not going to be able to get Corbin Burns for Tyler Wells and all that stuff. Like, that's just not the way it works. Like, you're going to have to give something up to get these guys. and it's just a matter of which guys the Orioles still value, and thinking about it from the other perspective too of what teams are going to value your guys. So, but yeah, I think Mike Elias is going to be fairly active going up until the trade deadline.
Because I'm looking at it right now from not just the perspective of I want him to make a move. You look around at the starting 9 in the field. Mullins isn't going anywhere unless you feel Cowser can be an adequate replacement. They're going to have to figure out a way to keep Mullins. Hayes right now is one of the top hitters in baseball.
Needs to be an all-star.
He's 15th in voting right now, which is absurd.
Yeah.
Then you look at the situation now where third base is going to be Gunnar, unless they move him to. I don't believe in moving him to shortstop, even though he could do it and he should do it. Jackson Holliday is going to be knocking on the door next year.
Correct. Correct.
Do you really want to slide Gunnar over to short just to slide him back to third base? I think that you keep Gunnar at third. He's a perennial all-star at third base. Second base, Frazier's obviously not the long-term answer. Is Westberg your future second baseman? Westberg's also been talked about as a prime trade chip. Do you want to trade him and then hope that Mayo or Norby can play second base? Or do you go out and find a second baseman that's above average that can in the hitting department, not necessarily sacrificing the fielding aspect? And then is Ryan Mountcastle your long-term first baseman? Josh doesn't seem to think so. I have a soft spot for Mountie. I think that he fits here. I want him to be successful. We need a right-handed power bat that's consistent in the lineup. Yeah. He's anything but consistent.
And his defense gets shaky sometimes.
It does. Now, looking at the construct of the current roster, some of these guys in the minors aren't going to be able to make the major league team here. You have a influx of infielders and outfielders in the minors waiting. We have 9 guys in the top 100 in most baseball ranking systems. They just added the 18-year-old catcher Basalo, and you have Westberg down there. You have Kerstad that can play the outfield and first base. You have all these guys that people want to see up here. You have Ortiz. You have that's bouncing back and forth. I'm trying to figure out where the outfielders that have been flirting with the majors already, such as McKenna and Stowers, fit into all this, let alone Cowser and Kerstad and in the distant future, Dylan Beavers, who's a power bat in the low minors. You got to move some of these guys, and who are you moving them for? And we don't have enough pitching in the minors, I think, to really, bring up and compete with the guys. We're going to have to go find the arms right now. We're going to have to go buy them. And it was an interesting point brought up yesterday on the radio that what do you make a move if Paul Goldschmidt from the Cardinals happens to be available? Do you go all in and get Goldschmidt to, be your first baseman for the next few years? And then in turn, you can flip Ryan Mountcastle for an arm. I personally believe that the 2 teams that have the arms that are available to us in the next couple of weeks is either going to be the Chicago White Sox or the Cleveland Guardians. I really think that's where they're going to find somebody. I think you can have Cease if you give up a little more. Lynn is attainable. Giolito is attainable. And Hendricks is attainable. And then on the Guardians, Shane Bieber, I believe, can be had. Now, I'm not saying blow up the whole farm system. That's not what I'm saying, because that's absurd to blow up this whole thing right now. But you got to really think about who you're willing to part with, either at the major league level or the AAA level, to make this thing work.
No one.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing too is, I mean, to bring up the Guardian situation, like they're only, I think, a couple games out of first place in the Central, and you're looking at the AL East and how stacked it is, and Toronto's, I think, like a half game out from being last place in the division. If you took them and put them in the Central, they're in first place in the Central, and just as we talked about earlier with the expanded playoffs, like all these teams are going to feel like that they're in it, so they're just going to hold on to their guys. And if you really want a Giolito, if you really want a Dylan Cease or whatever, if you want Lance Lynn, like the price is going to go up, and that's what I don't want to do as an Oriole fan. I do not just want to completely flush this minor leagues of 3 or 4 prospects in the deal and to watch guys like Josh Hader and guys that were in your organization, Andrew Miller, Eduardo Rodriguez. Like I don't want to see those guys pitching for other teams in a couple years and being superstars when they should have been in my minor league system and my major league talent.
That's true. That's very true. I struggle with it because it's like you get attached to the players and they're playing very well. You get attached to it and you get attached to them. Like Westberg is absolutely tearing it up. There's no reason that Westberg shouldn't have been up here a month ago. He deserves to be on the 26-man roster, and he's not, and it's frustrating. And then you look at guys like Cowser who get hot, then they get a little banged up, and then they get hot again. But who do you take out of the outfield? Because even when Mullins returns, Hicks is taking somebody's starting spot in that outfield.
Yeah.
Hicks might be the right.
Hopefully McKenna. Hopefully that's the end of the McKenna era here in Baltimore.
It might be.
McKenna's got to go, man. God damn. Ooh,
McKenna's got to go. And do you move Hicks over to right field and make Santander split
DH.
first base and DH? Santander is not a terrible outfielder, but if you had the chance to have Hicks, Mullins, and Hayes as your outfield heading into the second half of the season, you take it. Aaron Hicks is having a resurgence here in Baltimore, and I fully believe that he is going to get paid immensely somewhere else if he plays close to the level he's playing at for the rest of the season. Because you can't take him out of the lineup if he's playing the way he's playing. He's hitting the ball very well. He's a plus defender, and that becomes a situation of what outfielder do you send down? Is it McKenna? Or obviously that's what we want it to be, but you're not going to keep McKenna on the 26 over Hicks when Mullins comes back.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's going to be the big problem. The big decisions that they're going to have to make, and if this team is going to be a postseason team, I would love to see those guys down at AAA, contributing. Whether it's Cowser coming up, you see those stories. The David Price is coming up in the playoffs for all those years ago for the Rays and contributing. Like having those young guys like Cowser and Kerstad and those first round picks, like having them come up in a playoff push, I think would just be immensely valuable. For not only this franchise as a whole, but I think for those guys' confidence as well.
Absolutely. I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe that. Not to mention now the pitching aspect. I think that as much as we need a starter, we gotta solidify the middle relief. We know the 8th and 9th inning is going to be pretty solid with Cano and Bautista. We know that that's a good foundation, 8 and 9. We need to get somebody in that 7 inning area to where they're consistent. If you remember,
get Perez's ass out of there.
Oh, Perez has got to go. The Perez experiment is over. Yeah, you can throw 99, but if you can't throw a strike to save your life, you're what are you doing here? I like him. I like Cino Perez as well.
Me too. And he's pitched well for us at times, man. He's had some good runs, but he's just not it.
You're gonna wear down Baker, you're gonna wear down Colome, you're gonna wear down a lot of these guys. I think you need to add another arm.
We can't keep going the way it's going now. Yeah, it can't. It can't. It's impossible.
And I know
they're going to melt down.
I know right now, Ryan, that Grayson Rodriguez is kind of getting himself together in the minors. It seems like he's working out a lot of the flaws and a lot of the kinks, and he's getting right between the ears. My biggest worry is DL Hall. My brother said it to me in a text message the other day when he was watching the game, and he just said DL Hall gives him Zach Britton vibes, to where
that's pretty spot on.
To where he's never going to really pan out as a starter, but if you let him work for an inning or two in the middle to the end of the game, you got your money. But that's a high draft pick being a middle reliever, which is generally not the case. And I'm starting to worry about DL because we've been hearing about DL for the better part of 3 years now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking around the majors, these guys, I know this is an example of a position player, but like the Reds are already calling up like the Matt McClains of the world, and they're from drafts from a year ago. These guys, they're are quickly moving through each system of the major leagues or minor leagues so quickly that does Grayson Rodriguez, literally the start that he gets sent down to the minors at AAA, he had like 48 whiffs on strikes or whatever. Like, these are guys that they have to figure out these issues at the major league level. They are going to go. Kyle Stowers, he goes down and hits 5 home runs a week for Norfolk. I saw many of them when I was in Charlotte. He basically would hit 3 balls out of the Knight Stadium into Uptown Charlotte every weekend series, and then he goes up into the major leagues and just can't hit up there. They're not giving him opportunities. Like, I want these guys, and what you worry about is you bring these guys up like Grayson and DL. Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, all these guys, you're bringing them up to the majors and you say to yourself, okay, well, what happens if they don't succeed? Like, what if they're hitting 125 after a couple months? What if they have a 7.5 ERA, with Grayson Rodriguez or whatever? Like, are they just going to be complete, is it going to be Dylan Bundy and Kevin Gausman all over again? But what you've seen with Adley and Gunnar is that they've let them work out their issues, work out their kinks in the majors. And now Gunnar is one of the hottest hitters in baseball. This team's been on a 100-win pace since Adley Rutschman, got promoted last year. Like, if you're going to treat those two guys with, and let them figure out their issues in the major leagues, I think you can bring these other guys up and let them figure out their own issues as well. Like, Grayson should be starting every 5th day, and DL Hall should be a guy that should be hopefully striking out major league batters in the 6th and 7th inning, and then you can, if you need a spot start, I'd rather see you give that opportunity to DL Hall than Cole Irvin.
Yeah. At what point is the Irvin situation going to be deemed just a failure? And I'm not saying it is in a completely downtrodden negative aspect. I think Irvin has the ability to be a good pitcher, but right now he's not. And we traded a relatively decent prospect for him, and I know we wanted that to work. But right now, you're not getting any production out of him. It's been quite the contrary. And DL does need to be up here. Grayson needs to be up here. They should arguably be the 4th and 5th starters in the rotation with Bradish, Wells, and Gibson. Arguably, those, or if you want to put Kramer in there, you want to put Kramer in long relief. There was a segment on the radio a couple of days ago where Lock and Four suggested that we add a pitcher or two, and then we move Kyle Gibson to the long relief role and have him do cleanup duty if a starter gets shellacked. You don't do that to Gibson.
No,
he's our bulldog right now. It's an absurd take. And I just believe that they can fix the bullpen by simply bringing those two up. And then a lot of people are forgetting, and we talk about it a lot, Josh. Means is due back sometime soon. I mean, I don't know if he's throwing yet, but John Means will be here in July or August. So then you're going to have to find another rotation spot. Who are you taking out then? Are you going to put Bradish in long relief? Or are you going to put Kramer in long relief? So that's cavalry coming, but all 3 of them are unknowns because it seems like DL got absolutely rocked when he was up here.
He did. Jeez. That wasn't a good
They whooped his ass in Tampa Bay.
They did.
But I would rather have him up here and learning in the big leagues and having that experience and, being able to take your lumps. That's where you're going to find out what these guys are in terms of their confidence. If they're positive guys, if you feel like that they're just not going to make it. These guys are not they're not getting anything out of striking out the AAA guys down at Norfolk and Charlotte and all that. Like, bring them up here in Yankee Stadium. I loved one of my favorite games last year. In working on the radio was the game up in New York where DL Hall, I think, got that save in Yankee Stadium. Like, that's where I thought, okay, like this is the positive baby steps forward. And he's had some issues with health and there was the issue in spring training with his tipping pitches, and then there's the scare a couple weeks ago when we were talking about his velocity being down. But I feel like it's time for these guys to be up here and helping this team close that gap in between them and the Rays. Because even though this was a tiny little 2-game series, and I was thrilled yesterday when they got to Tyler Glasnow, and I thought if they sweep the Rays here in this 2 little mini game series, and you see how close you are to being a deep playoff team, then I think that you're in good shape. So. Hopefully all these guys, Kalzer, Kerstad, DL Hall, Grayson Rodriguez, are coming up here shortly and helping this team, close the gap a little bit.
We need them.
The last thing I wanted to ask you with the Orioles before we wrap the show, and I don't know if Josh has any more questions. Josh, I'll let you fire away in a second if you do. If you had to pick a prospect that you had to let go in terms of a trade, would you prefer to move Westberg, Kerstad, or Kalzer if it meant getting you a frontline starter, hypothetically speaking? If it meant a guy like Corbin Burns or Shane Bieber or Giolito is an Oriole at the trade deadline, who are you most comfortable moving?
I think looking at that group, I think you have to go Westberg just because we talked about it. Jackson Holliday's on the way, Connor Norby, Cesar Prieto. There's other guys in the system that can play the infield spots, and you've only got so many options. You've got Gunnar up here. You have Ramon Urias as a utility guy and a glove or whatever. I don't want those corner outfield spots to be touched. I think Kerstad, especially the way he's been playing lately or hitting lately. Looking at that AAA Norfolk lineup the last couple of days. You've seen the comments. Some people are like, "Man, this this lineup looks better than some Major League Baseball teams." I can't wait to see Colton Kalzer and Kerstad up here in Camden Yards hitting home runs onto the flag court and having Zach Hampel dive for them and all that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that I want those guys hitting in my ballpark here shortly. And I feel like if they have to go out and get a Corbin Burns, if they have to go out and get Giolito, if they go to the Cardinals and then they want Jack Flaherty or Miles Mikolas or somebody like that, I feel like giving up a Westberg, at least you're not blowing up. You're not essentially erasing a year of draft capital. Sending one of those guys away to get a piece back, to get an arm back.
Fair enough, Josh. You got anything before we wrap?
No, sir. I think we covered it all.
We did. Ryan, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for
Ryan.
taking some time out of your schedule to talk about the Ed Block Courage Awards, and we will be looking forward to what you guys have planned for next year. I know that you guys put a lot of work and a lot of effort into that and a lot of planning. So before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, if you go on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @RexSpexRyan. I got that name from one of my hosts in Charlotte when I said that David Tepper was a meddling owner because he was 4 inches away from Christian McCaffrey at a training camp practice. And he called me. He said it was reckless speculation for me saying that, but ultimately, I feel like I turned out to be a little right about that. But that is my Twitter handle @RexSpexRyan. You'll see a lot of Orioles stuff on there, a lot of Raven stuff, still some Panthers stuff on there, and a lot of Alex Morgan as well. That's the one little caveat.
She is your pinned tweet.
She is. Pinned tweet forever is hashtagged.
Yes. But thank you again, Ryan. We hope to have you back on the show sometime soon, heading into Raven season and the tail end of the regular season for the Baltimore Orioles. Thanks again, Josh. Let's go ahead and shut this down, man.
All right, Baltimore fans, I think it's a great time to be a Baltimore sports fan right now.
It is.
And then
Absolutely.
Maryland's looking good again, basketball. What more could you ask for?
Fuck Hunter Dickinson, by the way. But, you know,
Lamar signed. Shit, let's all be happy. Go to bed. I gotta be up at 4 in the morning.
there you go. Hey Ryan, hang around for 1 second for post show.
Word.
Shut it down.